Have you ever been playing Skyrim?
Of course you have. That's probably the reason you're here. So let's be real, if you made it this far in the series, you don't need the full overview. So here's the Spark Notes. And, without further ado,
Please sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy the Creature Climb Challenge.
alright, we are back with the final installment of the challenge. Last time, we left off about to start the next big phase of the companion's questline. I knew this next step involved becoming a werewolf, so I decided not to transform just yet. I wanted to see if the game would have any issues with it, since my default race was now Draugr. I headed to Jorrvaskr and met with Skjor and Aela in the Underforge. I agreed to undergo the transformation and participated in the blood ritual. With bated breath, I now waited to see if the transformation would cause a crash. Thankfully, the transformation was a success, and we were now a lycanthrope. We ran out to find our first victim, who just happened to be this poor guy who was simply manning his guard tower. It really was nothing personal. I'm pretty sure it was just the only way to de-transform. After the transformation ended, I woke up in the woods to Aela telling me that we were just outside of a Silver Hand hideout. If you recall from the last episode, Barkus and I caused quite a stir with those guys, and it seemed Aela wanted to give them a good scare. Well, I was born for that assignment. I know she was hoping to see me transform, but I doubt that she had this in mind. I could barely move at a Mudcrab's pace. However, I was confident in my magical abilities, and I knew I was a glass cannon, but I was really hoping that the cannon part was going to carry me. Well, unfortunately for me, the emphasis was actually on the glass part. And it certainly didn't help that I was slower than a snail dipped in molasses, glued to a piece of cardboard, and actively floating in space toward a black hole that was causing a time distortion, making me actually regress in time. Nevertheless, I decided to give it another go using a slightly adjusted strategy. And by slightly adjusted, I mean not adjusted at all, even a little bit. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, and I once again got skill diffed by people with non-arthritic legs. After this shocking and unforeseeable outcome, I was on my way back down to the Frost Astronaut. But I could certainly think of worse fates. Let's kick some ice. Ice to meet you. Whoa, dude. Looks like you need to chill out. It seems to me you're on thin ice. Anyways, I made my way into the hideout and managed to hold my own against most of the enemies inside. Aela and I carved our way through the Silver Hand until we reached a set of stairs where I made my first big blunder. I was not cool, calm, and collected, and I ran headfirst into a nearly lethal trap. I had to retreat, but I was chased into the other room and killed before Aela could assist. This set me back a bit, but I was determined not to drop another one. So I ran back up the stairs and used the bait and switch tactic much like I did with the gargoyle, where I would fake an attack forward and make them commit to a heavy attack. I could then use my heavy slam to stagger them and stab them quickly with my ice spike, Fist of Fury. This tactic and a willingness to retreat and fight another day saved me from a few close calls, and before I knew it, we had reached the end of the hideout. Here we discovered that Skjor had been killed and we needed to take out the Silver Hand leader. The fight was difficult, but my strategy once again paid off, and I eliminated the boss. Afterwards, I left for Jorrvaskr, but not before picking up my next quest from Aela. Once I made it back to Whiterun, I transformed into what I would describe as by far my least favorite form. Aela gave me another mission. However, I had no interest in attempting to fight the Silver Hand as a Hagraven anymore, so I looked for another quest option. Fortunately, I remembered that I had started the Bleak Falls Barrow quest for Lucian, and I had also grabbed Amren's Sword Retrieval quest earlier. I decided to try Bleak Falls Barrow, and headed that way. Once I arrived, I quickly dispatched the lower level bandits outside and at the entrance. I made my way into the dungeon and finally reached the giant spider and Arvel the Swift. I killed the spider with the help of a summoned flame atronach and freed Arvel. He obviously outran me and I gave chase. Oh, here I come. I am right behind you. Look, he's just lucky he didn't know me in my prime. After catching up to him, a little worse for wear, I killed the Draugr surrounding him by using a flame cloak spell and a fireball. I was quickly overwhelmed and I found myself dead once again. This time, I knew I couldn't make it out of there alive if I kept pushing forward, so I grabbed the claw and beat a hasty retreat. Alright, it is time to race on out of here. Look, I used to run track. I decided to pursue Amren's quest instead, since I knew for sure that I could handle bandits. After several days of travel, I made it to Halted Stream Camp and sprinted inside. Almost there. Just a little bit further. Once inside, I started chucking fireballs while surrounded in a flame cloak. Fortunately, I was doing a large amount of damage to the bandits, and they fell one by one to my fire blast. I was a bit nervous about the boss and one bandit who had a lightning staff with him, but I managed to take them both out when they got a little too close to my flame cloak. I grabbed Amren's sword from the chest and hastily made my way to Whiterun. Alright, we got it. Let's shuffle on back to Whiterun. I turned in the quest to Amren and headed for Shimmermist Cave for my next transformation. The next creature up was the Wisp Mother. I was excited to try this because with this one, I always had backup in the form of wisps. I transformed and checked the quest info to see where I was headed. Fortunately, it was actually fairly close by at Fort Fellhammer. I marked my map and turned down the northern road. On the way, I encountered a feisty little frost troll who thought I was going to be easy prey. My frost magic wasn't doing much, so I had to turn to less conventional methods for my particular creature. I still wasn't doing a lot of damage, but luckily I was joined in combat by a random polar bear. With the help of my unexpected new ally, I downed the troll and pushed forward. Finally, I had arrived at Fort Fellhammer. Now, the Silver Hand must have heard that I was on the way, because they immediately ran out to meet me on the road. I took the first one out with relative ease, but then I was hit with a barrage of arrows that left me extremely low on health. I backed up to heal and used my ranged guerrilla tactics from the cover of a nearby tree. My tactics were working fairly well until one of the archers repositioned himself. I had to fall back and disengage. Fortunately, this was actually possible with a creature that could move at a speed faster than that sloth's reaction time from Zootopia. I de-aggroed the Silver Hand enemy successfully and found a nearby area to heal back up so that I could re-engage once I was fully healed. And then this happened. Oh my god. After this tragedy, I decided to only use guerrilla tactics and prioritize cover and attacks of opportunity. This strategy paid off after the first few Silver Hand members went down. This was a huge difference maker in the fight, and it allowed me to make my way inside the walls and take down the last few archers before I headed into the leader's quarters to steal the plans. Once inside, I took the leader out before he had a chance to fully summon an atronach to help him. I then grabbed the plans out of the chest and made my way back to Jorrvaskr. I handed the stolen plans to Aela and then grabbed the next quest. With quest in hand, I headed straight to Shimmermist Cave for another transformation. Next up was the Spriggan Earth Mother. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever faced one of these before, so I was kind of excited to see what it had in store. It had fairly basic attacks, but the Spriggan Spray attack was a lot of fun to use. Unfortunately, there was a visual glitch whenever I used the melee. I did try to see if I could get rid of it, but to no avail. It's not too terrible to look at, but I do apologize in advance if it's annoying. Anyways, I decided to take a look at the map and see where my next quest was taking me. It looked like I was headed to Lost Knife Hideout to assassinate one of the Silverhand leaders. The journey there was rather uneventful, and I found the hideout easily enough. Once inside, I quite literally carved my way through the Silverhand inside. I was shocked at how powerful the melee attack for this Spriggan Earthmother was. I was either one or two-shotting every enemy, regardless of level. I progressed through the hideout quickly and found myself in the final room where the illegal wolf fighting was taking place. My natural Earthmotherly instinct kicked in, and it was my turn to say this. After a fairly short fight, I took out the Silverhand members and started back out. I then journeyed to Jorvaskr once again to find Aela and turn in the quest. She seemed pleased at my progress, but I still had more to do. I decided to switch things up, and I found Vilkas, who gave me a bounty hunting mission to complete. I grabbed the mission, and once again, headed to Shimmermist Cave. The Lurker was next on the list, although, in hindsight, I think he should have been next to last. I had no idea that the stats were so high. I mean, it did make sense considering the fact that they're a part of a DLC questline, but I really hadn't thought it through, so... In any case, it was too late to make the change, so I just went with it. After the transformation, I checked the map to see just where this criminal had last been seen. Incredibly, he must have just escaped the Whiterun prison, because he was extremely close by. I followed the map marker and spotted him making a run for it. I thought I was going to have to chase him down, but he surprised me when he stopped, turned around, and decided to fight the 12-foot hulking monster trying to kill him for money. I hesitated for a moment since he seemed so confident, but I quickly discovered that this tactic was just a last-ditch effort to save himself. He turned out to be an easy kill, and I went back to Jorvaskr with high spirits. I was cruising to the end of this challenge, and it seemed like the rest of the way would be simple and stress-free. Boy, was I wrong. After the Lurker was the giant transformation. This one was definitely in my top 3 list of transformations that I was the most excited about. After all, I really wanted to be the one to send someone into space instead of being launched myself. A quick note before we move on with the mission. I am allowing myself a detransformation in order to get through small spaces when necessary. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to the action. This particular quest from Aela had me heading much further away from my mission. I was going to Treva's Watch to steal Silverhand plans. As I was leaving for my mission, however, I was surprise attacked by 2 roaming sabercats. This attack presented a great opportunity to test out my strength, and I managed to kill both, launching one of them to Secunda. After this fight, I left for Treva's Watch and arrived safely sometime in the evening. Once I was there, I found a spot where I could get over the wall in order to bypass the long cavern and fort traversal typically required for the mission. I figured this would eliminate the need for a lot of detransformations or clipping toggles. I knew I had a lot of Silverhand enemies to defeat in the fort, but I was confident that I could do it. However, I was not expecting them to do as much damage as they were doing. I could stagger them with a slam of my club, but they could block my attacks and cause me to recoil. Now this recoil, combined with archers leaving me looking like a pincushion, made the fight extremely dangerous. Unfortunately, they rushed me at the same time, and I just couldn't handle the barrage of arrows and greatswords, and I had my first defeat since the Wisp Mother. Now that I was being reminded what it was like to be mortal, I had to come up with a better game plan. I decided to get rid of some debuffs by sleeping until morning at a nearby camp. This would also allow me to see better when the sun was out. I decided to try my classic hit and run tactic that had worked so well with the other creatures. I was right, and it did work extremely well. Pretty soon, I was isolating my fights and launching Silverhand members to the moons left and right. Soon I had eliminated all of them outside. I knew that the plans were inside the fort, but I also knew that my hit and run tactics wouldn't work so well in such an enclosed space. I made the decision that I was just going to make a run for the plans and then book it out of there. They were just doing too much damage for me to try to take them all on at once. I had to detransform to get inside, and once I was inside, I made a break for the plans. I knew roughly where they were, and I bolted for the chest. I found it and quickly grabbed the plans. The Silverhand seemed shocked that a 12-foot behemoth just waltzed into the room, because it took them more than a few seconds to react. This gave me just enough time to grab it out with most of my health intact. I sprinted back out and realized that I hadn't opened the front gate. They followed me out and I had to make a stand. Fortunately, I was outside and I could use my hit and run tactics again effectively. Nevertheless, they were still very strong, and after I caught a few stray sword swings, my health bar was looking very low. I thought it was all about to be over until I remembered that I could just leave where I came in at the side of the fort wall. I sprinted up there, ducking and dodging arrows, and managed to outrun them with the plan still in my possession. I had what I needed to complete the mission, so I headed for Whiterun, and after a long and boring road, I made it back to Jorvaskr. I turned the quest in and grabbed the next one from Aela. As I left for Shimmermist Cave, I was once again in high spirits, since the end of the challenge was now nearly in sight. I was finally nearing the end of this challenge. The next creature was the penultimate one, the Dwarven Centurion. I was pretty excited to see this thing in action because I knew how much of a nightmare they were to fight against, especially the steam attack. I checked my mission just before I transformed and discovered that I was retrieving another missing fragment of Wuuthrad. The Silver Hand had it at the top of a tower in the rift called Faldar's Tooth. I decided to head straight there because I was in a hurry. I was a little concerned about possibly having the same issues as I did with the giant prior, since it would probably be me versus a lot of Silver Hand all at once. But I did feel confident that I had just about perfected the hit and run tactic at this point in the run. I arrived later in the day while it was raining, and I made my way into the fort from the side. Once inside the walls, I was immediately met with arrows flying from the dark. I was having a hard time seeing where they were coming from, and they were doing a lot of damage. Finally, a Silver Hand member attacked me with a melee weapon, and I quickly engaged. However, the arrows were just too much to weather, and I was dropped way too fast for my own comfort. I was now down to just one life left. I did not want to have to redo this as a giant. I decided that it would be much easier to fight in the daylight, so I waited until the morning. I was definitely right, and who would have guessed that seeing your enemies made them much easier to fight? I was able to now successfully isolate my fights since I could avoid the archers by staying out of their line of sight. I managed to kill them all, but it left me with very low health. After some time of waiting for my health bar to recover, I finally made my way up the tower. I had to toggle clipping and then de-transform in order to get up the tower fully. I decided to try not to fight in the enclosed space at the top, so I ran up and got the boss's aggro. Once I got back down, I quickly transformed again and started the fight on the bridge. He eventually backed up and jumped outside of the wall of the base. At this point, I knew the fight was all but over. I had him against the ropes, and I was able to finish him right then and there. With the enemies now out of the way, nothing was stopping me from taking back the fragment. I grabbed it out of the chest and started back to Whiterun. However, before I left, I gave a victory steam roar over my newly conquered fort. Once I had turned this quest into Aela, she informed me that Coslashdog had learned that we had been going on these secret missions and wanted to speak to me. Like a kid being summoned to the principal's office, I made my way down to see him, trying to figure out what excuse I was going to use. I had decided on Aela made me do it. Unfortunately, the excuse was a bust, and he gave me a slap on the wrist. Fortunately, what he really wanted was to give me another mission. I was being sent to collect the heads of the Glenmoril witches. With these heads, lycanthropy could be cured. He wanted to be cured specifically since he was seeing the end in sight now, and he really wanted to go to Sovngarde instead of Hircine's hunting grounds. I decided to transform right there instead of waiting since the mission was so urgent. I also decided that in order to finish the challenge, I would have to finish this whole questline as the Dragon Priest to make it a bit more interesting. So, with the end in sight, I left Jorvaskr and started the journey to the Glenmoril Coven. I had started on the road to Glenmoril Coven, but then it occurred to me that I had about 18,000 septims burning a hole in my tattered pockets. So I decided to find a useful way to spend them. I gave it some thought, then I realized that I could spend it on training in destruction magic. Since I was now a Dragon Priest, I was mainly going to be using destruction spells for damage anyways. As a result, I figured getting higher level perks would make fighting easier and less costly. I made my way to Winterhold and arrived there without any issues. Once I arrived, I passed Feralda's test to enter the college. And had her train me. This training gave me a level up, and I trained with her until I couldn't train anymore. I then decided to head out into the wild and try to level up one more time to get just one more training session out of her. After fighting some minor enemies and a couple of pretty powerful sorcerers, I still hadn't leveled up. So I just decided to make my way back to the college and get some sleep before heading out to remove debuffs. I woke up early and started my journey to the coven. I arrived outside only a little later, and once I had arrived, I was attacked by a frost atronach who must have been guarding the door. I made short work of him with the help of some random vigilant of Stendar. After the fight, I made my way inside the coven hideout. Once inside, I got into a firefight with the first witch. I dispatched her with relative ease and decided to get all the heads while I was there. One by one, I found them in their little sections of the cave and severed their heads as a sign of victory. No one would ever have to worry about making Faustian bargains with these witches ever again. With the witches' heads in possession, I excitedly made my way back to Jorrvaskr to give Codlac the good news. Unfortunately, when I had arrived, it was too late, and my revenge tour with Aela had resulted in the Silver Hand wanting some revenge of their own. Codlac had been killed, and the Silver Hand had taken all the fragments of Wuuthrad while I was gone. Vilkas was understandably upset with me and Aela. I felt like a character in an 80s sitcom learning a hard lesson. He decided that we need to take action and hit their headquarters. He told me to meet him there. I agreed and made my way to Driftshade Refuge for one last fight against the Silver Hand. Once we had arrived there, we made our way inside and tore through every enemy inside. The Dragon Priest's health and attack power was just too much for the Silver Hand to handle, and I easily took out every group of enemies with a Flame Cloak and the Fireball spell. We finally cut through them all and made it into the deepest level of the hideout. In the room, they had placed the fragments on a table. We fought off the last vestige of the Silver Hand right then and there. Once we had defeated them, I was informed that the Silver Hand were no more. I floated over to the fragments and picked them up. Our second mission was completed, and I knew we now had only one more before the companion's questline was complete. We made our way back to Jorrvaskr one last time, and we were summoned to the Skyforge for Codlac's funeral. We held the ceremony and lit the fire on top of the forge. Now it was time to figure out what to do next. We were summoned to a meeting with the rest of the circle in the Underforge, but Eorlin asked me to give him the fragments of Wuuthrad. I agreed, and he told me to get the last one that Codlac kept in a drawer in his room. I grabbed the piece, brought it back to him, and then made my way into the Underforge. Once there, the circle argued for a minute about whose fault it was that Codlac had been killed and how he never got to be cured as a result. Aela took quite a verbal thrashing, and I stood in the corner saying nothing like a coward. She finally owned up to it and made peace with Vilkas. Vilkas found one last shred of hope for Codlac when he suggested that we could use the power at Ysgramor's tomb to undo Codlac's lycanthropy, even after his death. However, we needed Wuuthrad fully restored to even enter. Just then, Eorlin emerged with inspirational words of encouragement. He had reforged Wuuthrad. Honestly, in like a matter of minutes, he really was the greatest blacksmith in Skyrim. Well, either that or it was made of Legos. Either way, we now had everything we needed to rescue Codlac from Hircine's curse. The group left the Underforge through the secret exit and began the journey to Ysgramor's tomb. I arrived in Winterhold and started towards the tomb. Before crossing the water, I massacred some porkers who had decided to f*** around and find out. Afterwards, I floated to the tomb and easily killed a troll guarding the entrance. Once inside, I was greeted by Vilkas, who informed me that he wasn't going in with us since he felt like he had dishonored Codlac by seeking revenge. I placed the Wuuthrad in the statue's hands and the door opened. Once inside, we were faced with angry ghosts of former companions. I made quick work of them, all by one-shotting them with my fireball spells. We easily made our way through each encounter with the spirits and finally arrived in the last room. In the center, Codlac stood and informed us that he was hiding from Hircine. I told him that I had the heads of the witches, and he told me to throw one into the flames. Once I had thrown the head in, Codlac's angry wolf spirit appeared, and Aela redeemed herself by killing it quickly. Codlac thanked us and gave me the new title of Harbinger. After this, I decided to go ahead and cure my lycanthropy here as well, and threw another head into the flames. My angry wolf spirit appeared, and I killed it with a few fireballs. And that was it. We had now officially been named Harbinger, cured our lycanthropy, and completed the companion's questline. The challenge was officially over.
But wait! There's more!
As a bonus, I decided to complete one last mission. If you recall, I had started the Bleak Falls Barrow dungeon, but couldn't complete it with the Hag Raven. However, since I was a dragon priest, I decided to head back there and claim it for myself, before officially ending the challenge. All of the enemies I had killed earlier hadn't respawned, so I made my way up to the point where I had been earlier. Afterwards, I made quick work of all the Draugr in every level, and finally arrived at the dragon door with the claw in hand. I opened the door to about a dozen Draugr on the other side. I could only see them through the flashes of the fireballs I was launching, since it was so dark in there, but eventually I burned them all up and made my way into the inner sanctum. I killed the last of them from a distance, and then saw the word wall and the stone coffin, and knew I had one more high-level enemy to kill. A high-level Draugr was simply no match, and I killed him with a combination of my flame cloak and fireballs. And with that, I was now the undisputed ruler of Bleak Falls Barrow, and the Creature Climb Challenge was now officially completed. And that concludes the Creature Climb Challenge. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this series. It's been a lot of hard work to create, but it has definitely been worth the effort. I am truly appreciative of every single view, comment, like, and subscription that I get, and hopefully you all are entertained and enjoying the content. I do have another idea for Skyrim in the works right now, and I'm excited to put it out there. I won't be revealing it just yet, but look out for a post the day before I upload it. So if you are looking forward to it, make sure you are subscribed and hit the notification bell. Once again, I really do appreciate you all for watching something that I've worked really hard to make. I know it may not be up to the standard of some other bigger channels, but hopefully I can get to that level of production quality as I get better at it. I do have one last request of you before you go. If you did happen to enjoy the videos, please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. It goes a long way toward helping me out with the algorithm and potentially growing the channel. But even if you don't, I really am just happy if you enjoyed the videos and got some entertainment out of them. Now, with all that being said, it's officially time to conclude. So, be on the lookout for my next project soon, and I will see you there.